Good evening, my name is Espady Dumas, and I recently did my project on segregation. So I got the idea of doing a project on segregation because when we recently read the book called Barracoon, which was by Zora Hill Hurston, she talked about a man who was a former slave and talked about his life and everything about it, and then learning about his life, learning about everything I've learned throughout history. I came to the ideas of using my project based off segregation. Segregation started with African American individuals in around the 1600s, and it lasted for around 200 years, called through the process of slavery. Slavery was used by the wealthy people as well as people of their own kind to work in the farms, work on the plantations, work as just people without pay, people who are just used as property. And segregation lies in with this because it's basically it's people who are viewed less and separated from the higher class, the lower class. They're not viewed as people, they're viewed as property, which in today's era it's not okay. And segregation ended after the Civil War, which was not very true. The only thing that happened was there was a law through the Constitution, which was the 14th Amendment, but nothing really changed when you come through the terms of history, learning about things, learning about what it is today. Just even the people who have been, or they have family who are segregated and stuff, it ties down to learning about these things, how it harms people. And in today's era, people are still segregated because they're pushed away from education, or they're looked at differently because of where they live, what school they go to, what they're wearing. That's not okay because you're judging an individual based off of how you portray them through appearance rather than who they really are on the inside, not the outside. And today there's a lot of bullying based off segregation, based off of a race of an individual, and that's not okay. So I did my project based off segregation because it opens up an eye into the real world. So I had 2 articles based off of my project that I found that were peer reviewed. It was the effects of people being segregated or being outcasted into the world is it leads to health issues. It leads to people with PTSD and people with disorders, and that's not okay because people with disorders, they need help, and sometimes they're not given the proper help, and it can cause the suicide, it can cause harm to another individual, or it can cause them to end up being a bad person, but just because they're having a hard time expressing how they feel. And that's just because the way they were treated, the way they were separated from the world, the way they were viewed, and it's not the way that they should have been portrayed. They should have been portrayed off of someone that's hurting in the inside, and they needed care rather than being viewed as damaged. And then another article was, in today's modern world, education is looked at by race. Like there's schools that have people who need a certain race or ethnicity in the school, so they have capacities. Or you take these, or when you fill out information, how you have people with you fill out forms of who you are, what your ethnicity is and stuff, and they actually look into that, and putting you into schools and education systems rather than looking at your test grades, who you are as an individual. They're looking at who you are as a race, and that's not okay, especially in today's society where we think it's growing, but in reality the only thing growing is the technology rather than the human beings. And that's something that's uh, it's not very good. So when I learned about Zora Neale Hurston's book, reading about it and stuff, today's world is not that far back from how it was back then. The only difference in my eyes is that the technology is different, but segregation still occurs through corruptness of cops, politics, all of that, bullying. It all ends with race or where you live, and that's discriminating an individual not based off of who they are on the inside rather than who they look like or who they sound like. And it shouldn't be like that. Not in today's world, not in any world.